Now, in addition to this 7 times prophecy in Leviticus, which is the first time prophecy, or shall we say the oldest time prophecy in the Bible, from Leviticus, foretelling the punishment of Israel, notice how, again, this 7 times is repeated 4 times. And we'll get to the significance of this repetition 4 times as we move along. There is another, interestingly enough, there is another 7 times prophecy further along in the Old Testament in the book of Daniel, chapter 4. And this is in reference to a dream that Nebuchadnezzar, the king, had. And he related the details of his dream to Daniel, who was at that time called Belteshazzar, and requested Daniel to interpret the dream for him. And he asked other people, magicians, astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And actually, this book of Daniel is told from the perspective of Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar says, I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. But at the last Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And before him I told the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee, and no secret troubleth thee, tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and the interpretation thereof. And thus were the visions of mine head in my bed. I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. The leaves of the tree were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all. The beasts of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher, and an holy one came down from heaven. He cried aloud, and said thus, Hew down the tree, and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit. Let the beasts get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts in the grass of the earth. And this is verse 16, where the 7 times prophecy begins. It says, Let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. That's the first time it's mentioned. And in verse 22 it begins, It is thou, O king, thou art grown and become strong. This is Daniel speaking to the king. For thy greatness is grown, and reacheth unto the heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. And whereas the king saw a watcher and an holy one coming down from heaven, and saying, Hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, and the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over him. This is the second time that 7 times is mentioned in this prophecy. It continues, verse 24. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which is come upon my lord the king, that they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou shalt know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomever he will. And whereas they commanded to leave the stump of the tree roots, thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee. After that thou shalt know that the heavens do rule. Wherefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable unto thee, and break off thy sins by righteousness, and thine iniquities by showing mercy to the poor, if it be a lengthening of thy tranquillity. All this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of the 12 months he walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. The king spake and said, It is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power, and for the honor of my majesty? While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee, and they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. Now there's a few more verses in this chapter, but that is the 4th mention of the 7 times prophecy of the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar. Now the reason why this is significant, this 4, is because we have to go back to the first prophecy in the Bible. The very first prophecy, which is in the book of Genesis. Now most people look at this prophecy and think, it's called the prophecy of the 4 rivers. This is the first time that the number 4, the repetition of 4 things, is repeated, and it's very significant. So this is what I've discovered. In the book of Genesis 2, the second book of Genesis, after all the creation of the earth, and I'll just read the first 14 verses. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them, and on the 7th day God ended his work which he made, and he rested on the 7th day from all work which he had made. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work, which God created and made. And these are the generations of the heavens and of the earth, when they are created in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And the Lord God planted a garden eastward of Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight, and good for food. The tree of life also is in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, this is verse 10, and it begins the prophecy of the 4 rivers. It reads, And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from it thence it was parted, and became into 4 heads. The name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. The name of the second river is Gihon. The same it is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. The name of the third river is Hiddekel. That is it which goeth toward the east of Assyria. And the 4th river is Euphrates. Now I'm going to switch charts here. Now let's break down this. This is the prophecy of the 4 rivers. And many Christian scholars and religious scholars are looking around the world for where is the 4 rivers, the land that has 4 rivers, and then they would know that's where Eden is or was. And they keep looking for this land of the 4 rivers. But the 4 rivers is not a reference to 4 rivers. Let's look at it. And it's pretty clear it's not a land of 4 rivers. The name of the first is Pison. That is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, and the gold of that land is good. Havilah means circular or complete, or in a sense, united. And my understanding is that this is a reference to the tribes of Israel. They were united. The gold of that land was good. They're God's chosen people. And let's look at the second river. The name of the second river is Gihon. I don't know how to pronounce it. The same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. One of the first Christians was from Ethiopia. This is found in the book of Acts, chapter 8, verses 26 through 39. And the oldest Christian church is in Ethiopia. So this could clearly be a reference to this river is the religion of Christianity, the religion of Christ. And the name of the third river is Hiddekel. That is it which goeth toward the east of Assyria. Now, Assyria is the ancient land of Iraq, and east of Assyria is going to be Persia. Persia is the land of Zoroaster, who was a Persian prophet 1,000 years before the appearance of Jesus and after the appearance of Moses. And the fourth river is Euphrates. Now, here's an interesting point, interesting fact. I didn't make this up. Euphrates, the word Euphrates means to break forth. So this fourth river, Euphrates, it appears that there's some destruction involved in it because the very name means to break forth. The first Islamic conquest captured Iraq. And here's a picture of the Islamic conquest, the kingdom during Muhammad, and then the expansion during the caliphs, and then the Umayyads. And if you notice, the first conquests under Omar spread the Islamic kingdom through Iraq, where the rest of the river Euphrates is. So, these four rivers are not four rivers. They are the four Abrahamic religions. These are descendants of Abraham: Moses, Jesus, Zoroaster, and Muhammad. So when the prophecy of the 7 times is repeated 4 times, the reference could quite possibly mean that during each of these Abrahamic religions, the punishment of Israel will endure. And it was during the dispensation of Moses that the Jewish king Manasseh committed his sin, and the kingdom of Israel was lost. And it endured through the Zoroastrian dispensation, the Christian dispensation, and the Islamic dispensation. And it ended in 1844, in the year 1260 of the Mohammedan calendar, with the coming of the Bab and Baha'u'lláh, and Baha'u'llah's son Abdul-Baha. An interesting point, I must confess myself. So let's go back to the prophecy of the 7 times with respect to Nebuchadnezzar's dream. If we lay it out on the timeline, his dream was, I've done some research on this, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, 602 BC was about the time he had this dream. And if you put it on the timeline, once again, it resolves in using lunar years. Wouldn't you know? It resolves exactly at 1844. How are you supposed to know that is a good question. And the answer is you're not supposed to know this until the Promised One comes and tells us. And without the appearance of Baha'u'lláh, the Bab, and without Abdul-Baha's clear elucidation and explanation about the 70 weeks and the 1260 days and the lunar years and the solar years, we would not be able to figure this out. So if we were to thank and praise Baha'u'lláh for giving us Abdul-Baha, the length and breadth of the universe, we still would have fallen short in our duty and still wouldn't be worthy of anything. Okay, now let's talk about the 1260 days. From the Hijra, which is 622 AD, Abdul-Baha has explained to us from the book of Revelation, 1260 days. In Revelation chapter 11, I shall send my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. Abdul-Baha has explained this prophecy over and over, so I'm not going to add anything to it. But suffice it to say, from the Hijra to the year 1260 coincides with 1844, that the 42 months that the beast will rule and overthrow Islam, which is the Umayyads and everyone since then. Now, what's interesting is you can see on the time chart that the prophecies from Revelation that Abdul-Baha has explained are in red. There's another prophecy, there are 2 prophecies from Daniel in the 7th chapter and the 12th chapter, which also refer to 3.5. Now, 1260 days is 42 months, is 3.5 years. In Daniel's prophecy, he talks about times and half for the coming of